He did not want to give her any hope. Therefore he could only keep a distance from her. Unfortunately, Feng Lianqing had waited all night outside Helian Manor, but Helian Yu still did not return home. He was afraid that Feng Lianyi would cause trouble to Feng Manor again, so he could only return to Feng Manor first. The next morning he came to Helian's manor, hoping that it would make him look more sincere to apologize so that Helian Yu would not complain to his master. Initially he thought he would have to wait for a long time for Helian Yu to leave the manor, but who knew that not long after he had arrived at Helian Manor, he saw a girl with a servant sneakily coming out of the gate. Of course the guards guarding the door would not stop her. But she quietly slipped out, and her little face was filled with joy. When Feng Lianqing saw Helian Yu, he was delighted and called out, "Young lady Helian?" This voice was familiar to Helian Yu. If it had been in the past, she would have definitely pounced over excitedly. But this time she just calmly looked back at Feng Lianqing and smiled. "Brother Lianqing, why are you looking for me?" Feng Lianqing smiled faintly. "I just want to apologize to you for what happened yesterday." "Young lady Helian, are you free now?" "Oh, I'm not." Helian Yu rejected without hesitation. She still had to take care of Xiao Qing's herbs garden, so how could she have time to pay attention to him? Feng Lianqing was stunned. He suddenly felt like Helian Yu was different today. "Is young lady still mad at me? I knew that you were protecting Lady Nan yesterday. I've also warned Feng Lianyi. She will not dare to do so again. Besides, I will always be on Lady Nan's side." Helian Yu laughed and shook her head. "Brother Lianqing is overthinking. I won't complain to Grandfather Tianya that you are helping Feng Lianyi. I'm not that kind of person now. You don't have to worry too much and don't have to come to me. I'm really busy and don't have time now." Feng Lianqing was confused. Helian Yu was busy? As the eldest daughter of the Helian family, she had no work to do. What could she be busy with? Me for extra chapters. Furthermore, Helian Yu would always put him first, but why was she rejecting him now? Feng Lianqing stared at Helian Yu dumbfoundedly. Xiao, let's go. Xiao Qing is still waiting for us." Helian Yu quickly pulled Xiao and walked away. She did not give Feng Lianqing the chance to stop her again. Her figure quickly disappeared under the morning light. Early in the morning, Feng Ruqing was sleeping deeply and comfortably in her bed. But noisy sounds came from outside the door, waking her up. "Who the hell is disturbing my sleep so early in the morning?" Nan Xian slowly opened his eyes and pulled the girl into his arms. "Shall I go take a look?" "No need." Feng Ruqing rose from the bed and took the clothes in her hands. Her face darkened. "I want to see myself who is so immoral to disturb a pregnant woman's sleep." Nan Xian looked at Feng Ruqing's face. Never disturb a pregnant woman's rest or else that person who bothered the pregnant woman would face a miserable end. Fortunately, he had slept well at night and was very restrained in the morning. Otherwise, the first miserable person would definitely be that person making the noise. After Feng Ruqing had finished putting on her clothes, she came out with a livid face. Her eyes were cold. She saw Helian Yu standing in the doorway from afar, not knowing what she was arguing with someone about. She was so loud that Feng Ruqing's face darkened even more. "Helian Yu, what are you arguing about? And why are you blocking the door? Get out of my way. I want to see who's coming to my place so early in the morning to disturb my sleep." Helian Yu was stunned. She obediently moved to the side, exposing the woman standing in front of the door to Feng Ruqing. Feng Ruqing slowly raised her eyes and saw a woman in a long snow-white dress, but her dress seemed out of place and clashing with her strong eyebrows. Feng Lianyi bit her lip and finally dared to walk in through the door. "Maiden Feng, I'm here to apologize. What happened last time was my fault." Bang! Feng Ruqing lifted her foot and kicked at Feng Lianyi's chest, throwing her a few meters away. She pulled up her sleeves and looked at Feng Lianyi coldly. "Were you the one who was making the noise just now?" Feng Lianyi wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth and slowly climbed up from the ground. Her face darkened, but she did not dare to get angry. "I'm here to apologize." "Apologize?" Feng Ruqing sneered. "You came to apologize, but you came so early in the morning and disturbed my sleep." Feng Lianyi's expression changed dramatically. Her eyes sank as she said, "It was Brother Feng who asked me to come over earlier. I'm sorry if I've disturbed Maiden Feng." "Feng Lianqing?" Feng Ruqing's eyes flashed with anger. "What grudge does that bastard have against me?" "Feng Lianqing, I'll settle with him later." "And how did you find me?" "The waiter told me you'd moved here." Feng Lianyi was quite honest and told her about the waiter without hesitation. She thought about it for a while and then said, "Big Brother Feng said that you would wake up in the early morning, that's why he told me to come to find you early in the morning." Feng Ruching was speechless. It is that damn waiter again. Me for extra chapters. Feng Ruching's heart was filled with rage as she looked at Feng Lianyi fiercely. Maiden Feng, the corner of Feng Lianyi's lips curved up, and a sinister glint flashed in her eyes. You know that I am a member of the General Manor and I have come to apologize. Because I respect Master Nan Xian and Big Brother Feng. You were indeed responsible for the disappearance of the little prince at that time. If Big Brother Feng asks about it, you know what you should say, right? Feng Lianyi glanced at Feng Ruching. She saw that Nan Xian did not follow Feng Ruching at the moment, but was standing not far away watching her. That was why she lowered her voice with a hint of threat in her tone. Lianyi was furious. Feng Lianyi, are you threatening Xiaoqing? Feng Lianyi laughed. Am I? Maiden Feng attacked me just now and I didn't make a fuss. So I hope Maiden Feng won't make a fuss either. Otherwise you'll be in trouble. Feng Ruching did not say anything. Her face was dark and gloomy. It was hard to guess what she was thinking. Lianyi clenched her fists tightly and inched toward Feng Lianyi. Feng Lianyi, do you treat me like a dead person? How dare you threaten Xiaoqing in front of me? Sister Lianyi, Feng Lianyi's smile suddenly faded. Do you think Brother Feng will believe you or me? Lianyi sneered. I don't care who he trusts. But I know Grandfather Tianya will trust me more. Feng Lianyi, I will tell Grandfather Tianya what you've done. Chapter 1532. Don't mess with morning grumpy person 2. Feng Lianyi's expression sank, but she was still smiling. Unless you want Big Brother Feng to ignore you too, Lianyi was stunned. As you know, Big Brother Feng and I have been like sisters since we were young. He ignored you after you confessed to him. Back then, General Manor's people almost matched me with him, but he still treated me nicely. I don't have any feelings for Big Brother Feng. Otherwise, do you think you have a chance to be by his side? In fact, Feng Lianyi clearly understood that the reason why Feng Lianqing had not been cold to her was that he knew she had no feelings for him. But Lianyi was different. If Feng Lianqing did not alienate her, he was afraid that she would fall harder for him and might be unable to control herself. Then both of them would suffer. Oh, Lianyu's tone was calm and indifferent. So? Feng Lianyi moved closer to Lianyi. Sister Lianyi, if you want to remain by Brother Feng's side, I hope you know what you should say and what you shouldn't say, do you understand? Lianyi clenched her fists tightly, and her breath was a little erratic. When Feng Lianyi saw her expression, she knew what kind of decision she would make. She looked at Feng Ruching and smiled. Initially she never wanted to go against her. But this woman could not let her go, and even Big Brother Feng was on her side. She had no other way but to use her status as a General Manor member to suppress her. Lianyu's small fists were trembling. She could not control herself as she punched Feng Lianyi's beautiful nose. Get lost. The punch was so sudden that Feng Lianyi did not even have a chance to react before feeling a pain in her nose as blood flowed from her nostrils. Xiaoqing, Lianyi turned to look at Feng Ruching. I promised you to take good care of the back garden, cultivate, control my temper and never lose my temper again. But this time I really couldn't control it. In the future, I will use more time to cultivate and never lose my temper again. Feng Ruching was surprised. Cultivate? Me for extra chapters. She was just short of some laborers and Lianyi had taken it seriously? Well, she responded faintly, it's not good to lose your temper. We're all civilized people. We shouldn't simply get angry. I know, so I will continue to take care of the herbs garden and try to improve my violent temper as soon as possible. Good? Feng Ruching caressed Lianyu's small head as if she were petting a cat and smiled. Little fatty, she called gently. The little fatty looked like a ball of meat coming from behind. But Lianyi somehow felt that the little fatty seemed to have lost a lot of weight recently. Feng Lianyi was stunned when she saw the little fatty running in front of her. Her face turned pale. What is this kid doing here? Pretty sister, the little fatty smiled and ran up to Feng Ruching. I was just planting a herb. What have you summoned me for? The waiter from Wushang City and is trying to harm me, Feng Ruching said calmly. The little fatty was furious. Then I'll send someone to beat him up. Good? Feng Ruching stroked her belly and smiled. Feng Lianqing also wants to harm me? Oh, then I'll send someone to beat him up too. Lianyi was stunned. Where are the civilized people? Where's the gentle touch? You beat up people and this is what you call gentle? The little fatty scratched the back of his head and when he looked up, he saw Feng Lianyi. He frowned as he said, why is this little servant from General Manor here? Oh, this little servant was the one who had provoked my father and mother to punish pretty sister back then. The little fatty was furious, even his gaze was filled with anger. Pretty sister is my savior and she can tame spirit beasts. If the emperor and the empress hated her, would he not be the one to suffer? In this matter the little fatty knew who he should trust, especially when Feng Ruching gave him a herbal dish yesterday. And he had dropped 2 pounds today. This was something that had never happened before. Seemed like, no matter how much he ate and drank in the future, he would still be able to lose weight quickly and rapidly. However, such a good chance was almost destroyed by Feng Liani. His father was afraid of that old man Tianya, but the little fatty was not scared of anything. No matter how fierce Tianya was, he would not bully children. However, the little fatty turned his head to look at Feng Ruching. He then asked nicely, "Pretty sister." Feng Ruching frowned. "Call me Lady Nan." "Oh, all right. Lady Nan, can I beat up this woman?" The little fatty obediently asked. He now looked like a good boy, waiting for Feng Ruching's instruction, and was no longer as arrogant as before. Feng Ruching frowned again. "What do you mean? Am I that kind of person? You should ask her if she wants to be beaten up or not." 1 me for extra chapters. Helian Yu looked at Feng Ruching, confused and speechless. "Oh, all right." The little fatty turned to Feng Liani and asked with some annoyance, "Do you want to be beaten up by me?" Feng Liani was stunned. Her face was a little pale. She bit her lip and took a few steps back. "Little prince, I didn't know you were here." The little prince frowned. "I ask you, do you want to be beaten up by me?" Feng Liani's eyes sank and her clenched fists gradually loosened. "Little prince, I'm a member of general manner. You're just a servant. If I beat you up, that old man Tianya." Bang! Feng Ruching suddenly knocked the little prince's head with her knuckles. The little prince held his head and looked at Feng Ruching with tears in his eyes. "Respect the old and love the young, do you understand that?" Feng Ruching turned cold. "You can't disrespect the old man." "All right," the little prince pouted. "Pretty sister is always right. Respect the old and love the young." After all, Feng Liani is not young anymore. Suddenly, the little prince seemed to have thought of something. He paused and turned to Feng Liani. "Lady Nan said to respect the old and love the young. I respect the old only, and are you old enough?" The little fatty seemed sincere, looking at Feng Liani seriously. However, he did not notice that her face had darkened. Feng Liani's face stiffened. If this little fatty were not a prince, she would have slapped him long ago. But just because of his identity, she could only endure her grievance and smile. "Little prince is funny. I'm not married yet, so how can I be old?" "Oh," the little prince responded, "so if I beat you up, it won't be considered disrespectful, would it?" This time, before Feng Liani could react, the little fatty had already pounced over and sat on Feng Liani. He beat her fiercely, causing her body to tremble in pain. She clenched her teeth, not daring to resist or beg for mercy. She simply allowed the little fatty to bully and beat her up. Feng Liani did not understand why she would still be treated like this even after having endured so many things. If the general had been more protective of her, she would not have been bullied to such an extent, and the royal family would not have dared to treat her recklessly. Feng Ruching was feeling a little sleepy again. Without paying any more attention to these people, she turned around and walked toward the courtyard. Not far away, Nan Xian looked at her with a faint smile. The man's eyes were filled with gentleness and strong affection for her. "Are you done?" "Yes," Feng Ruching yawned. "I hate those who disturb others' sleep." Nan Xian's gaze was like the warm sun, no longer as cold as when they first met. Looking at such a handsome fairy-like face in front of her, Feng Ruching recalled the first time she met him. The man who once lived in the bamboo forest. She would never be parted from this man again for rest of her life. "Let's go back and have a good rest." Nan Xian stroked Feng Ruching's head gently. His voice was soft and gentle. "You need to rest more. In the future, if anyone dares to bother you, just get the spirit beasts to eat them. Why do you need to come out personally?" Feng Ruching nodded slightly and smiled. "All right." Not far away, Helian Yu and the little fatty shivered violently, silently taking Nan Xian's words to heart. Feng Liani, on the other hand, looked up at the man not far away, her eyes filled with bitterness. Me for extra chapters. For the first time she cared so much about a man, but that man's gaze was always on the other woman. He was so cold in front of other women but gentle to that woman. Feng Liani clenched her dress in her fists tightly. The pain that she felt was suffocating, and that made her feel so bad. She did not want to look at this disgusting scene anymore. She turned away, restraining the pain and jealousy under her eyes. Feng Ruching paused and turned to look at the group behind her. Her voice was cold. Little fatty, I'm going to rest. You throw her out as soon as possible. I don't want to be woken up from my sleep again. Oh, don't forget about that bastard Feng Lianqing. All right, the little fatty responded obediently. Feng Ruqing ignored them again and walked into the backyard with Nan Xian. On the same day, something worse had happened in Wushang City. Someone had destroyed Wushang City Inn. The fact that Wushang City Inn named as that was enough proof of the power it had behind it. Rumor had it that the third prince, Qi Hao, was the owner of Wushang City Inn. Qi Hao was the son of consort Lin, and he was different from the arrogant little prince and the bully fourth prince. The gentle and elegant Qi Hao was the future emperor preferred by the ministers. Chapter 1535. The inn's destruction too. Someone had destroyed Wushang City and owned by the third prince. How could people not be shocked? At the imperial palace, consort Lin was crying so hard, kneeling in front of Emperor Qifeng. Your Majesty, you have to do justice to me. The little prince is too reckless. Howerson has been destroyed by him. Qifeng's face darkened. Yuer has gone too far this time. But Yuer was his most beloved son, and he was a bit reluctant to punish him too harshly. He cleared his throat and was just about to speak when the ministers in the imperial hall started to express their anger. Your Majesty, you have to discipline the little prince. He's really unstoppable. I also heard that he beat up Feng Lianyi from the general manor. She's a good girl. Feng Lianyi is a nice girl with a good temperament. She and Master Lianqing have contributed a lot to our city. But she was treated like this by the little prince. The little prince has also destroyed the inn owned by the third prince. He is obviously jealous of him. The more these people spoke, the more outrageous it became, and Qifeng's face had also darkened. Your Majesty, an old man with a white beard stood out among the crowd and interrupted what Qifeng was about to say. Feng Lianyi is a member of the general manor. It was not easy to persuade Tianya to become the general of Wushang City back then. Lianyi did nothing wrong. It was the little prince who was looking for trouble. Do you think General Tianya will let him go easily? Tianya had always been fair. If his people had not made a mistake, he would never allow anyone to touch them. But if one of his people had made a mistake, he would not protect them. Feng Lianyi had indeed done something wrong and almost caused a disaster in Wushang City. If the emperor punished her for this, Tianya would not say anything. But in this matter, Feng Lianyi tried to apologize, but the little prince had beat and kicked Feng Lianyi out of that place. He had gone too far. Your Majesty, who in the world does not make mistakes? Maiden Lianyi has made mistakes before, but she has repented, so why won't that woman just give her a chance? Me for extra chapters. And your Majesty still lets the little prince hang out with her. The little prince is already stubborn if he is with her. Does your Majesty know what will happen later? Your humble servant requests that your Majesty severely punish the little prince, flog that woman 100 times to avenge for Maiden Lianyi, and then expel her from Wushang City. Feng Lianyi was a nobody. She had grown up with Feng Lianqing in the general manor, but Tianya had not accepted her as a disciple. However, Tianya was someone who would protect even a kitten in the general manor. Tianya would not protect Feng Lianyi if she did something wrong. But how could Tianya not be angered about things that happened today? General Tianya had brought a great victory during the battle against the 8 kingdoms with his strength. He became famous in one battle, and since then no one dared to provoke him. Back then, if it was not for the fact that General Tianya also needed a place to stay, perhaps he would not have come to Wushang City. But how dare the little prince provoke the general so many times? Qifeng somewhat disagreed, but he could not say anything in front of these ministers who were still pressuring him. Your Majesty, Consort Lin cried again. Her beautiful face was filled with tears. Please, you must do something. The little prince has always bullied others. If he continues like this, I'm afraid it will affect our city. Qifeng did not open his mouth. It was hard to know what he was thinking. The ministers looked at each other with a glint in their eyes, and one of them said, Your Majesty, if you continue to protect the little prince this time, I will resign. That's right. Your Majesty, if you let the little prince go, General Tianya will be angry, and he might leave this city. Do you really want that to happen? Feng Lianyi is a good girl. It must be that woman who had done something to her first that caused her to act as she did back then. Your Majesty, don't you know what kind of person General Tianya is? He has raised Feng Lianyi since childhood. How could she misbehave? In comparison, that woman. We don't know her background. Qifeng frowned and rubbed his temples, trying to ease his headache. It would be easier to deal if this matter was about other people, but this was related to Tianya. Something bad might happen if he continued to protect Yue. Your Majesty. Just at this moment, a voice filled with panic came from outside. A eunuch crawled in front of Qi Fang. Your Majesty, something bad happened. The little prince has just sent someone to beat up Feng Lianqing, and he is not allowed to fight back. Qi Fang was stunned. His entire face changed dramatically. This time Yue had gone too far. He could still understand why the little prince attacked Feng Lianqing. After all, Feng Lianqing had been at fault before. But Feng Lianqing. He was Tianya's disciple, me for extra chapters. Without General Tianya, how could his kingdom be so peaceful? Moreover, it was hard for him to settle it in his way in front of these ministers. Your Majesty, I've told you. The little prince is stubborn and disobedient. But Feng Lianqing is innocent, so why is the little prince doing this to him? He must be punished. The ministers looked annoyed and their faces were filled with anger. It was as if the little prince had not just beaten up 2 people, but had committed the world's biggest crime. Feng Lianqing, as the general's disciple, was a great warrior of this kingdom, and the little prince had beaten him up. Would that not make the people of this kingdom furious? Qi Fang's face grew colder. This time he really could not protect Yue anymore. After a moment's silence, he finally made up his mind and said coldly, Guard. Pass my decree, put Yue under house arrest for 3 months, and do not allow him to take a single step out of the palace. 3 months of house arrest was considered the lightest punishment, and it could be seen that Qi Fang was indeed tolerant of Qiyu. But the ministers somewhat disagreed with it, especially Consort Lin, whose beautiful eyes were filled with sorrow. Your Majesty, my son is so innocent, yet the little prince keeps bullying him. Not only that, but he's also bullying those 2 people from the general manor. This is the same as wanting to drive the general out of our Wushang city. Indeed, the little prince has never respected General Tianya. If your Majesty doesn't punish him severely this time, when the general returns, I'm afraid it will be really difficult to deal with him. I beg your Majesty to punish the little prince severely. He should not be allowed to continue his evil deeds, and I ask your Majesty to banish the woman who incites the little prince to commit violence and never allow her to return. Qi Fang clenched his fists tightly, looking down at these ministers with his fierce eyes. Don't forget you are not Tianya. Have you ever thought about yourself when you force me to the corner like this? An old minister trembled. He carefully glanced at Consort Lin at the side before turning to Qi Fang and said, Your Majesty, we did this for the sake of your Majesty. If Tianya leaves, it will not be beneficial to our Wushang city. Qi Fang slowly closed his eyes, and only after a moment did he open his eyes. A cold light flashed on his eyes. Pass my decree to bring the little prince back before punishing him. He could ignore the others, but he had to respect Tianya. Your Majesty, what about the woman who harmed the little prince? The other old minister frowned and asked. Qi Fang was slightly startled. These days Yue did go to see Maiden Feng often, and after getting to know her, he became more and more daring. And he had even bullied those 2 people from the general manor because of Maiden Feng. But Qi Fang also understood that if he punished Maiden Feng, Qiyu would be angry with him in the future. It was a bit of a headache just thinking about it. He rubbed his temples to ease his headache and sighed helplessly. If there's nothing else, all of you can leave now. A voice suddenly came from outside the hall, causing Qi Fang's expression to change a little. I want to see who dares to touch my son. The crowd turned and saw a woman in a phoenix dress walking in slowly. She walked elegantly with a cold and arrogant look. Empress, what are you doing here? Qi Fang frowned. You go back first. I will come to you later. The Empress sneered as she continued to walk. Her steps were deliberate and her voice was firm. If I had not come, would your Majesty have punished Yue severely? Empress, Qi Fang looked helpless. You know me very well. This time Yue is indeed at fault. He bullied Feng Lianqing with his words back then, and this time he beat Feng Lianqing and Feng Lianqing. I am doing this for General Tianya. Me for extra chapters. After all, Yue was his most beloved son. Even if he was arrogant and overbearing without reason, he still pampered him. How could he bear to punish him severely? Really? The Empress looked intently into Qi Fang's eyes. So how do you want to settle this? Your Majesty, can you tell me what you plan to do with Yue? Facing the Empress, Qi Fang was speechless, and he did not even know what to say for a moment. His silence caused the Empress to laugh out softly. If your Majesty really wants to punish Yue, then punish me too. Empress. Qi Fang frowned slightly. Then he stood up from the dragon throne. What are you doing? You haven't done anything wrong, so why should I punish you? Yue is my son. He made a mistake because I have not disciplined him well. The Empress lifted her phoenix robe a little and knelt gracefully. She smirked and said, therefore I am willing to suffer on his behalf. If it were not for her negligence back then, Yue would not have turned out like this. She had spoiled him since he was young and raised him to have such an attitude. Maiden Feng was right. I didn't raise him well. She could not bear to let Yue suffer and would instead take the blame for him. The Empress had embarrassed Qi Feng in public, making his face a little gloomy. But she was the woman he favored the most, and even if he was so furious, he could not vent it. Guard put the Empress and the little prince under house arrest for 3 months. He fiercely waved his sleeves and left in a huff, not looking back at anyone. The Empress remained kneeling on the ground. She was expressionless. Your Majesty. Consort Lin was anxious. She had the chance to bring down the Empress, so she could not give it up. Therefore she hurriedly ran up to the Emperor. She was anxious. You have to bring justice for my son. Qi Feng stopped in his tracks, turning his back to those behind him. I have already punished Yue on behalf of General Tianya. If anyone dares to question my decision again, I'll punish that person as well. Consort Lin's face stiffened. She stopped and stared blankly at Qi Feng. It was only after Qi Feng had left that the Empress got up from the ground. She walked past Consort Lin, but she never looked at her until the end. The Empress and the little fatty were under house arrest in Fengyuan Palace. However, Fengyuan Palace was so big that it consisted of a few courtyards. The little fatty was told about the punishment the next day. He cried hard after knowing that his freedom had been restricted for 3 months. It was heartbreaking for the Empress to see the little fatty's face already soaked with tears. She then sighed helplessly. Endure it for 3 months. After 3 more months you will be able to get out again. Your father was not willing to punish you severely, but the ministers had pressured him. You should not hate your father. The little fatty's nose was runny. Then will father expel pretty sister from Wushang City? The Empress smiled faintly. That's not going to happen. Don't worry. Oh, the little fatty responded calmly, that's good. If pretty sister is chased away, he'll destroy all the flowers and plants that those old ministers have grown at home. The Empress was speechless. Me for extra chapters. She was stunned for a few minutes before she understood why the little fatty was so sad. But, the little fatty frowned. If I don't go find pretty sister for 3 months, she'll definitely be snatched away by that wild girl Helian Yu. He grunted. That wild girl followed pretty sister all day long, not giving him a chance at all. What? Pretty sister gave all those skills of taming beasts to that wild girl? No, he had to leave the palace. 3 months was too long and a lot of things could happen during that period. Are you talking about Helian Yu of the Helian family? The Empress was stunned. Isn't that Helian Yu? Chasing after Feng Lianqing? When I was at the city gates before, I could tell that the relationship between Feng Lianqing and Maiden Feng was quite good. With Helian Yu's temper, I'm afraid that she won't let Maiden Feng go. The Helian family was not so strong in Wushang City. The reason no one dared to provoke Helian Yu was because of Tianya. That old master in the Helian family was Tianya's man, so naturally the Helian family's status rose as well. The little fatty pouted. Helian Yu wouldn't like a big idiot like Feng Lianqing. She had rejected Feng Lianqing when he went looking for her back then. If she dares to have any relationship with Feng Lianqing, then she is pretty sister's enemy and mine as well. The Empress was slightly stunned. Maiden Feng has a really deep influence on Yue, but that's good. Yue had not had any friends since he was young, so it's good to have someone close to him. Yue, go and play by yourself. For the time being, don't go out. The Empress smiled faintly, petting the little fatty's head. And don't make your father angry again. Mother could help you this time, but I'm afraid I can't help you next time. Those old ministers keep pressuring the Emperor. And, she paused and frowned. Don't go to General Manor again. All right. Little fatty responded unconcernedly. That fool Feng Lianyi dared to plot with those old ministers to bully him. Did she think he would let her go? Even if that old man Tianya came back, he would never spare Feng Lianyi easily. The Empress was quite relieved when she saw the little fatty had agreed with her. She was afraid that Yue would go looking for trouble in General Manor again. And if this continued, the Emperor would really punish him severely. Thinking of this, the Empress lowered her eyes as they turned cold. Her account with Feng Lianyi would not be settled so easily. The Emperor was concerned about the general, but she had nothing to worry about. All she cared about was her own child. No mother can turn a blind eye to someone who bullies her child. Yue, the Empress smiled again. Your father has confined you, but you can move freely in Fengyuan Palace. You can go to the courtyard for a walk so you don't have to be trapped here. All right, the little fatty nodded obediently. The Empress was slightly stunned. She felt like, Yue behaved quite these days. Fengyuan Palace. A young girl of about 10 years old held a kite, laughing and playing with the palace servants in the garden. She was beautiful and lovely. Me for extra chapters. Suddenly, the little girl caught a glimpse of the meatball-like figure in front of her. She was so frightened that she stiffened, and the kite in her hands slipped to the ground. Her face turned pale and her hands trembled. Yue, she gripped her dress tightly, somewhat nervous. The little fatty sneered. Why are you always so fearful? Mother and father are not here, so you don't have to make that look. Even if mother saw it, she will never punish me. Besides, you are also mother's child. How can you be so cowardly, not even the slightest bit comparable to pretty sister's fierceness? Oh, when the little girl heard the little fatty's words, she was a bit envious. Since she was young, her younger brother was always in poor health, making him too fat and unable to cultivate. She and her mother would indulge him, and after a long time, he became so domineering and unreasonable. But she had gotten used to it, and even though her mother sometimes felt sorry for her, she still had to endure it. He always bullied her, but she would never fight back. Initially she was not this cowardly, but just for her brother she had become so. Therefore, she envied the pretty sister that her brother had praised just now. The little girl looked at how the little fatty was looking at her so disdainfully. She pursed her lips as she said, I will try to correct it. Don't be angry. The little fatty picked up the kite from the ground and placed it in the little girl's hand, a little annoyed. When I get out of this place, you and I are going to meet pretty sister. She's amazing and I'm going to make her change you. The little fatty's face was fat, and his small eyes could not even open bigger anymore. And I'm not bullying you right now, so why are you so scared? If I wanted to bully, I'd only go to General Manor and bully that little servant, Feng Lieni. The little girl's face grew paler. She grabbed the little fatty's arm and said in a panicked voice, Don't go. Father will blame you. Don't go to General Manor. The little fatty looked down at the little girl pulling his arm, and then up at her pale face, pursing his lips. The little girl realized that she had been tugging at Chiyu. She panicked and hastily let go of his arm. I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. Don't be angry. Initially, the little fatty was not angry, but he exploded when he heard her apologize. You didn't do anything wrong, what are you apologizing for? If pretty sister finds out, she'll scold me again. The little girl was startled and looked at him blankly. And, the little fatty looked slightly confused, but looking at the worry in the little girl's eyes, he sighed and said, I didn't mean to be mean to you just now. I was angry when I saw you like this. I heard that fourth brother bullied you yesterday. You are the Empress daughter and he is nobody. You must be as arrogant as I so that no one dares to bully you. The little girl was even more confused. One more thing. The little fatty's face turned red with anger. You have to learn how to complain. If people bully you, you go to mother and tell her. You never complained to mother when I bullied you back then. Fourth brother is an outsider, so you must tell mother. Like me, I just love to complain. The little fatty lifted his chest proudly as if being good at complaining was something one should be proud of. But, the little girl lowered her head. It's not good to complain about everything. I don't like it. The little fatty was furious. I don't care. You have to learn it. Otherwise, they'll ignore you from now on. They'll leave the palace and I'm going to the Spirit Beast Mountain. The little girl panicked. She grabbed the little fatty's hand, but this time she did not let him go. You can't go. It's dangerous. Last time, her younger brother had gone to the Spirit Beast Mountain and almost did not come back. Me for extra chapters. She would not let him go again. Then would you just report me to mother? The little fatty asked coldly. The little girl bit her lip. All right, I'll tell mother. The little fatty was beaming with joy after hearing her words and happily held the little girl's hand. Pretty sister said, a child who can't complain is not a good child. If you don't learn to complain, you are a bad child. The little girl was confused. Oh, all right. The moment the Empress stepped out of the palace, she saw the two figures, one tall and one short, holding hands under the glorious sunlight. She smiled happily and looked directly at the two people in front of her. Yue was unwell since she was young, so she pampered him a little more. In comparison, Chiner was sensible since she was young and rarely let anyone worry about her. But the more sensible a child was, the more heartbreaking it was. Now, seeing the brother and sister finally getting along, she felt relieved. Therefore, the Empress did not interfere with them. She took one last look at the two kids and turned around to continue into the palace. Chapter 1541. Sneaking out 3. If he's bullying you again, you come to me and I'll beat him. The little fatty swore and patted his chest in assurance. The little girl was slightly stunned. The sun was shining brightly today as if it had also warmed her heart. All right, but, a cold light flashed on the little fatty's eyes. You must help me first. Pretty sister was very gentle with girls, and the way she treated Hellion you and him was different. And she even treated a female beast much better than a male. All right, the little girl smiled. Her eyebrows were curved and she looked so beautiful. Even without even asking him, she had directly agreed to the little fatty's request. Hee hee, the little fatty laughed. Can you find a way to get me out of here? I can't stay here for 3 months. Pretty sister will run away. The little girl blinked. Is she really pretty? Of course. So who's prettier, her or mother? The little girl tilted her head. The best-looking person she had ever seen was her mother. Was there anyone prettier than her mother? Well, the little fatty held his triple chin. Honestly, she's prettier. But in front of mother, they'll say both of them are pretty. The little girl was speechless. So, that young lady is prettier than mother. Hearing the little fatty's words, Chiner was really excited to see her. I know of a place. The little girl pursed her lips. It's a hole in the ground that I discovered by chance in Fenghuan Palace back then. It leads outside the palace. The little girl's eyes were bright and shining like the stars. That was back when mother had just entered the palace. Father forbade her to leave the palace. So she had secretly dug it, and only later did mother tell me about it after I discovered it. Chiner moved closer to the little fatty and whispered, but don't tell anyone. This is our secret. The little fatty was silent for a moment. Why didn't mother tell me for extra chapters? Because you'll tell everyone about it, the little girl smiled. But this time you want to sneak out of the palace, and if those old courtiers find out, they'll definitely stop you. So now you definitely won't tell this secret to others. The little fatty was stunned. He suddenly felt like he had become an outsider in his house. He really needed the warm embrace of his pretty sister right now. Promise me one thing. The little fatty pouted. What? Don't hide anything from me again, or I won't take you to meet pretty sister. Chiner looked at the little fatty blankly, but she still nodded obediently. All right, I promise I won't hide anything from you anymore. Only then did the little fatty smile and hold Chiner's hand. Let's go. Let's go out of the palace. We must sneak out and not let other people in the palace know about it. Do you understand? All right, I understand. Other than you and me, no one else will know that you have snuck out of the palace. Chiner smiled adorably. The eunuchs and the servants were all speechless. They had heard everything and could only watch these two kids sneak out of the palace. Should we tell the emperor about that? The palace servant was a bit confused and dumbfounded. Another palace servant shook her head. No, if the little prince gets angry, we'll be in trouble. No one in the palace dared to mess the little prince. He was someone who would seek revenge for the smallest grievances. If one offended him, that person would not have a good ending. This was why, after considering carefully, these eunuchs and servants decided not to report to Qi Feng. Moreover, they were all Fenghuan Palace's servants, so they would not betray their own master. Inside the courtyard, a young girl in a red dress sat lazily at the pavilion. She caressed her abdomen and smiled happily. Just at this moment, she looked up and saw a figure as round as a meatball, followed by a 10-year-old beautiful young girl, heading toward her. The young girl's face was so adorable and her eyes were bright. She seemed like a sweet little girl. But she looked a little timid. Like Nayland Dyer. Somehow, Feng Ruching was actually missing General Manor and her family in Luoyuan Kingdom. Lady Nan. Qiyu let go of Chiner's hand and ran toward Feng Ruching happily. Chiner was a little dumbfounded as her gaze fell on Feng Ruching. She was unable to tear her eyes away from that stunningly beautiful face. Her mother was the most beautiful woman in Wushang City. Otherwise, her father would not have been so obsessed with her and chosen her as his empress. But now there was someone more beautiful than her mother. She was stunningly beautiful. However, Chiner was still a little timid, not daring to step forward, staying at the side and nervously gripping the helm of her dress. Feng Ruching raised her eyebrows and turned to the little fatty. It's not enough for you to come to me yourself, but you're also bringing someone over? Tell me, whose girl is this that you have abducted? The little fatty chuckled. She's my sister. Feng Ruching was shocked. She looked at Chi Chiner and turned to the little fatty who was as fat as a ball, but she still could not see any similarities between them. Me for extra chapters. Moreover, Chi Chiner was a little timid and she did not look like a princess at all. Sister. Chi Chiner spoke timidly. The little fatty stared at Chi Chiner and said, Lady Nan doesn't like people calling her sister. You have to address her as Lady Nan. Oh, Chi Chiner pursed her lips and lowered her eyes. The little fatty turned his head proudly and was about to ask for a compliment from Feng Ruching, but Feng Ruching's fist had first landed on his head. Ouch! The little fatty was in pain. He looked at Feng Ruching pitifully and was about to cry. Lady Nan, I didn't say anything wrong. Why did you hit me this time? Well, I just want you to shut up. Feng Ruching smiled faintly and turned to Chi Chiner. This little girl had obviously suffered countless bullying that made her so timid. She was also a princess, so why was she raised like this? Dyer was much better than her. After all, General loved Dyer so much and many people wanted to help her. Are you really little fatty's sister? Feng Ruching frowned as her eyes were fixed upon Chi Chiner. Does the Empress love boys more than girls? Does she bully you? Chi Chiner was stunned and hurriedly shook her head. No. Mother treats me nicely and gives me what she gives you air. So why are you like this? It's, Chi Chiner lowered her head. It's my fault, not my mother's. Father and mother have more things to settle. I don't want to bother them with my own problem. What a sensible and well-behaved girl. But Feng Ruching did not like such a girl. She liked someone as bold as Tang Yin, cute and arrogant like Gu Yi, and simple like Helian Yu. A sensible girl like Chi Chiner was not her type. She had paid more attention to her because some parts of her were too similar to Dyer. Her heart clenched at the thought of the hardships that Dyer had suffered. Even now that Dyer had become a normal child, it was hard to erase the hardships that she had suffered back then. The only difference was that Dyer wanted to protest, but she could not express it. While Chi Chiner, who was a princess, was too sensible. Everyone could bully her. Don't bow your head. Feng Ruching frowned as she saw Chi Chiner lowered her head. She stood up and sauntered toward Chi Chiner. A girl should always be proud of herself. It's all right to have a little temper. You can't bow your head to anyone. You must hold your head high at all times. Chi Chiner was stunned, but this time she obeyed and raised her head. Her clear, watery gaze looked directly at Feng Ruching. And, Feng Ruching paused, if little fatty bullies you, hit him back. You are his sister. You have a right to teach your disobedient brother a lesson. Chi Chiner pursed her lips. You didn't bully. Feng Ruching glanced at Chi Chiner coldly. Chi Chiner hurriedly changed her words. You often beat me. I didn't want to make mother worry about me, so I didn't dare to tell her about this. As soon as she said these words, Feng Ruching frowned and stared at the little fatty coldly. This little fatty was like the previous chief manner, and it made her think of poor Dyer. Me for extra chapters. The little fatty was so scared that he trembled in fear. He had brought Chi Chiner to meet Feng Ruching, but he did not expect Chi Chiner to report him to Feng Ruching. Lady Nan, I know I was wrong, the little fatty cried. Ever since I've been by your side, I've been cultivating, and I've never gone out to cause trouble again, nor have I bullied the weak. I've changed, indeed. If the little fatty had not corrected himself, he would not have brought Chi Chiner here. Feng Ruching's face remained cold. The little fatty cried harder. I know I was wrong. I won't dare to do it again. Don't be angry with me. Feng Ruching came out of her thoughts. Her face was no longer as cold as before. Sorry, I was just thinking about something. The little fatty was stiff, not daring to move. Is pretty sister thinking of how to drive me away from here? Since you are little fatty's sister. Feng Ruching ignored the little fatty and turned to Chi Chiner. Why aren't you as arrogant as him? When you come to me in the future, I don't want you to be so timid. You must act like a princess and don't be too proud but foolish like Feng Lieni. Chapter 1544. Little Fatty caused trouble. Chi Chiner was confused. No one had ever told her these things. The sister. Seems like a good person. Little Fatty. Feng Ruching raised her eyebrows and turned to the little fatty. Since you've brought an extra person, hurry up and get to work. I'm a little tired. Don't bother me if there is nothing important. Oh, all right. The little fatty chuckled and grabbed Chi-Chiner, taking a shovel out of his storage bag and placing it in Chi-Chiner's hand. Before Chi-Chiner could react, he had already dragged her to the herb's garden. From that day on, the little fatty would always bring Chi-Chiner to the herb's garden to cultivate, and he had even secretly saved some of his payments to give to Chi-Chiner. After all, Feng Ruching would not exploit her labors. She would still give some payments to anyone who came to work with her. Initially, Chi-Chiner didn't know what these payments were, but after hearing the little fatty say that they were all spirit herbs, she was a bit dumbfounded. Wushang City did have spirit herbs, but these were all very precious. Even father would not just give away spirit herbs to anyone but would reserve them for those with stronger talents. Chi was an exception. Because of his physique, he needed to take the spirit herbs often, but for Chi-Chiner, these spirit herbs were something she had never come across before. The innocent Chi-Chiner lowered her eyes to hide her feelings. Her voice was choked with sobs. Sister Feng is actually a good person. She wanted to give the spirit herbs to Chi-Chiner, but she could not find any excuse to give her a gift. Therefore, she had deliberately asked her to work in her garden and give her the spirit herbs as payment. She had never met such a nice person in this world. This is for you. The little fatty slipped the spirit herbs to Chi-Chiner. Pretty sister said that you're a bit slow, so you need these spirit herbs to sharpen your brain? I don't need them. Chi-Chiner pursed her lips and tried to reject it. But the little fatty was a little angry. I ask you to take it, so just take it. I'm smart. I don't need these spirit herbs. You're too stupid, so you must eat more. If you keep making excuses, I won't play with you again. Chi-Chiner panicked. It was hard for her to get so close to Yue, so she did not want to be hated by him again. Me for extra chapters. I'll take it. I'll just take it. Don't be angry. Chi-Chiner panicked and took the spirit herbs from the little fatty's hand. The little fatty did not notice Chi-Chiner's panic. His heart was quietly relieved and said, "Let's go back to the palace. If we're late, father will notice us." All right. Chi-Chiner nodded and quickly followed the little fatty. She was still a bit timid, but she at least dared to look up at people now compared to before. Wushang City. Because it was nearly dusk, there were quite a few people left on the streets. Chi-Chiner seemed afraid and followed the little fatty closely, afraid that this crowd would squeeze her to death. The little fatty was in a hurry to get back to the palace and did not notice the fear in Chi-Chiner's eyes. He did not know why there were more people than usual. The crowd next to him came over, and suddenly someone had pushed Chi-Chiner hard, causing her to fall backward. Ah! She was so frightened that her face turned pale, and her heart trembled harder. She quickly tried to reach out to tug at something, but she accidentally pulled at the little fatty's pants, tearing his pants. The little fatty shivered as he felt a sudden cold. He looked down and realized that he was already naked. Chapter 1545. Little Fatty caused trouble too. The little fatty quickly pulled up his pants and turned his head to see which bastard was trying to harm him. The moment he turned back, he saw Chi-Chiner had already fallen to the ground. Her face was pale and her eyes were filled with terror. The little fatty panicked. But with his short little hands he could not grab Chi-Chin in time, so he could only watch Chi-Chiner hit her head on the ground. Fine. Chi-Chiner was clearly in pain and wanted to cry, but she was afraid that the little fatty would be worried, so she hurriedly got up from the ground, holding back her tears. The little fatty pursed his lips. He looked at Chi-Chiner and said, "Stupid sister, I'm not worried about you. You're so stupid. You fall when you walk and have even pulled my pants off." Chi-Chiner lowered her head. "I didn't." Just now, before she could finish her words, a man ran into her, his shoulder hitting Chi-Chiner's body. Chi-Chiner was already a bit weak, and now her body once again fell backward. Fortunately, the little fatty grabbed Chi-Chiner in time, and only after she had stood firm did he shout angrily, "Hey bastard! Stop right there." The one who had just run into Chi-Chiner was a young man around 20 years old. He was slightly stunned when he heard Chi-Ye's words and looked back at Chi-Yu. "Did you just call me?" "Exactly." The little fatty was furious and walked toward the young man. "You kneel and apologize to my sister." The young man turned around and saw that everyone was now looking at them because of the little fatty's voice. The young man sneered. "This girl just bumped into me, is it still my fault? You want me to apologize to her? Ridiculous." Chi-Chiner turned pale. "I didn't, me for extra chapters. It was this person who had run into her twice. She did not bump into him at all." "Ha!" The young man sneered again. "Little girl, you bumped into me and your brother is forcing me to apologize. I see that you're dressed like a nobleman, so you want to bully a commoner like me? Chi-Chiner panicked. She turned to the little fatty and said, I didn't run into him. It was he who ran into me first. Shut up. The little fatty snapped. Don't you say anything more. I've got eyes, do you think I couldn't see who had run into whom? A large crowd was drawn to them now. The little fatty was arrogant and overbearing, and his notoriety was known to everyone. Of course, some people in the crowd knew him. Hey, isn't this His Highness the Little Prince? If this was someone else, perhaps I would still consider who is correct. But if the little prince is here, there is no need to think. It's the little prince who is bullying again. Shh. Don't talk too much. You will lose your life if you dare to say such words in front of the little prince. The crowd became quieter. They froze and everyone took a few steps back, fearing that they would offend Chiyu. Chiyu's face darkened. He did not even care about the surrounding voices. He stared firmly at the young man. Kneel down and apologize to my sister immediately. Otherwise, I will send someone to beat you 100 times. Chapter 1546. Little Fatty caused trouble. 3 Nuer, Chiner was a little nervous. They had secretly snuck out of the palace. If her imperial father were to find out, he would definitely not forgive them. Before Chiyu managed to say a word, a young man's arrogant laughter suddenly sounded from the side. So, it turns out that the people from the imperial family bully ordinary citizens like this. I, Fong Nan, have never been afraid of the imperial authority. Since I have not done anything wrong, then I would rather die than yield. Even if you beat me to death, I will not apologize. The young man put his hand behind his back. He was tall and elegant like a bamboo. Good? A single word good came from the crowd. Everyone turned around to look at the speaker and saw a brave face. The girl was dressed in white and riding atop a tiger. In her hand was a sword, and what looked like a slight smile hung at the corner of her lips. It is Maiden Fong, the General Manor's Maiden Fong. Maiden Fong's medical skills are top-notch. Today she is diagnosing people for free. That's why many people from Wushang City are flowing into General Manor. I never thought that Maiden Fong would appear here. Maiden Fong has never been fearful of strong authorities. She is incomparably valiant. Now that she is here, she can speak out and stand up for us ordinary citizens. Hearsay Maiden Fong has beaten up by the young prince. It was because Maiden Fong could not tolerate the young prince acting like such a bully and therefore rebuked him, provoking the ire and hatred of the young prince. However, Maiden Fong is someone who is protected by the heavens. Otherwise, the civil and military officials would not have stood on Maiden Fong's side. We, people of Wushang City, could not be clearer on how General Tianya is as a person. Maiden Fong is one of his people, so how could she be bad? Furthermore, General Tianya is very powerful. Now with Maiden Fong around, this Master Fong is safe. Those discussions made the hint of a smile in Fong Lianya's eyes deepen. However, her expression did not change as she got off the tiger's back, and calmly walked toward the young prince. Greetings, Your Highness, the prince, me for extra chapters. The young prince frowned as his fat face scrunched up. It's you again, this despicable servant. Fong Lianya's expression froze, and even her smile seemed forced. There was a surge of hatred in her eyes, but it very quickly disappeared. Young prince, I heard that you and the princess are bullying the ordinary citizens just now and have. Thus, purposely came over to take a look. Fong Lianyi stood straight as a smile slowly appeared on her face. The prince used to being arrogant. If I had not come over, wouldn't I be leaving these innocent people to your mercy? The little fatty was so angry his face turned red. He angrily pointed at Fong Lianyi. Bullshit. It was him who had bullied Elder Imperial Sister first and intentionally wanted to push Elder Imperial Sister down. Fong Lianyi lowered her head as her gaze swept past that young man. The young man felt his heart fluster and immediately knelt before Fong Lianyi as he put on a pitiful face. Maiden Fong, I beg you to save me. Just now, the princess has pushed me a couple of times because I was blocking her path. Now the young prince, His Highness, is afraid that I will say things that are not beneficial to the princess' reputation and want to beat me to death. I beg Maiden Fong to save me. The young prince stared at the young man for a while before raising his head to look at Fong Lianyi as he said through gritted teeth. Fong Lianyi, you despicable servant. All these must be your doing. Although he was unable to cultivate, it did not mean that he was an idiot. Fong Lianyi, this despicable servant, definitely knew about the news of him sneaking out and had purposely used the free diagnosis offer to create the crowd flow. Then she had probably sent this young man to deliberately push his elder imperial sister by using the crowd as an excuse. She had even purposely provoked him. Chapter 1547. Little Fatty caused trouble for however no matter how well Feng Lianyi planned it, it didn't matter. Ichiyu had always been arrogant and domineering. Who was afraid of whom now? Your Highness, Feng Lianyi sneered. The people of this world may be afraid of you but I, Feng Lianyi, am not. Even if I am not someone from General Manor and did not receive the protection of the general, as long as I see injustice, I will definitely not sit aside and ignore it. The young prince mocked. Back then, who was it that had acted lowly and humble in front of me? Your Highness has used the life of the general to threaten me and I naturally had no way to ignore it. To not create conflict between His Majesty and General Manor, it doesn't matter if I, Feng Lianyi, have to swallow my anger. However, now I know that no matter how much I tolerate you, Your Highness would not let go of General Manor and every living being under the sky. Therefore, I am no longer willing to continue tolerating. She literally means that the reason she was acting humble and lowly before the young prince back then was for the sake of General Tianya and not because she was afraid of him. Feng Lianyi held a sword as she walked toward the little fatty. Today, even if Your Highness would like to beat me, Feng Lianyi, to death, I, Feng Lianyi, am not willing to allow the young prince to continue to listen to the words of a witch and cause harm to the world. She raised her head, giving off a dignified feeling. The eyes of the little fatty were bloodshot. Who did you say was a witch? Naturally, it is the person who has bewitched the young prince. Presumptuous. The young prince was greatly angered as he immediately took out a baton from his storage bag. Yes, there was a baton in his storage bag. He swung the baton fiercely, conjuring a gust of wind as it struck Feng Lianyi. With Feng Lianyi's cultivation, avoiding the young prince's attack was practically something that needed merely a lift of her finger. However, not knowing why, she did not avoid it and had allowed the baton to land on her body with a painful muffled whack. Even if Your Highness were to beat me to death here, I must use my life to protect the citizens of this world. There were many people in Wushang City and these people simply looked on as Feng Lianyi used her life to protect the whole of Wushang City. They felt great gratitude toward her. In comparison, His Highness the young prince was too arrogant and domineering. This princess was no good either. She had similarly bullied the weak. Me for extra chapters. The pitiful maiden Feng had fallen into the hands of these two people. She would definitely not have any good days to come. Where? Chi Chiner looked at Chiyu worriedly. She pursed her lips. She fell into deep thoughts. When another smack landed on Feng Lianyi, she spat out a mouthful of blood, and her body swayed as she almost fell to the ground. The young prince was so angered that he lost all sense of rationale. You useless, despicable servant. Even someone like me without cultivation could hit you until you vomit blood, yet you are still in General Manor. Tianya, that old thing must be dim-eyed due to his old age to keep you around. The gaze Chi Chiner used to look at Feng Lianyi turned into a daze. Logically speaking, with Yuer's cultivation, it was impossible to beat Feng Lianyi to such an extent. Why did she? Yu. Feng Lianyi's sword was stuck to the ground as she forcefully raised her head. Her gaze was bloodshot as it carried a rage within it. I am willing to tolerate you time and again. Even if you beat me, I had not put up any resistance. However, I will not allow you to insult the general. The young prince sneered. You speak as if you care about Tianya a lot. From what I see, Tianya does not seem to care much about you. Otherwise, why did he take Feng Lianyi as his disciple but not you? Though the young prince was still quite young, there were many things that he was actually able to tell clearly. Tianya had accepted Feng Lianyi but not Feng Lianyi as his disciple. This itself had clearly shown that there was something problematic. Chapter 1548. Little Fatty caused trouble. Feng Lianyi wiped the blood from the corner of her lips. I don't care what you say, no matter what, it cannot affect the relationship similar to that of a grandfather and granddaughter that I have with the general. I am the only female relative in General Manor. This is sufficient to explain the problem you raised just now. The crowd was in an uproar. There were all soldiers in the general's mansion, and there was not even a single maid. Feng Lianyi, as the only female family member, indeed showed how much importance the general attached to her. Perhaps Tianya did not take her in as a disciple because he wanted to raise her as his own granddaughter? Furthermore, Feng Lianyi continued to approach the young prince as her tone was a little forceful. The young prince should stop looking for that woman. The princess was originally a kind-hearted person, but now she is doing such evil things. It is definitely because of the influence of that woman. Chi had always been timid and fearful. Her character was somewhat weak as well. However, hearing Feng Lianya's words, her small face turned red from anger as she stuttered and stammered. You are talking nonsense. Feng. Elder sister Feng is very kind. She is a good person, a very good person. Feng Lianya sneered. This is where this woman is amazing. She was able to bewitch both of you siblings to such an extent. Even all the men under the sky are within her control. I never proactively provoked her, but she, again and again, refused to let me off. She is such a vengeful person, yet you say that she is a very good person? But the little fatty once again launched an attack and directly struck Feng Lianya on her head. A trail of blood flowed from Feng Lianya's head. She directly looked at the little fatty, and the corner of her lips curled upward into a smug smile. Her body rumbled and crashed to the ground as she lay in a pool of blood. The young man who was kneeling by Feng Lianya's side reacted as he immediately crawled back up and said urgently, Quick, go and report to General Manor. Maiden Feng has been beaten to death. His Highness bullied the citizens and beat Maiden Feng to death. Quickly reported to General Manor. Chiner's face turned white as she stood trembling by the little fatty's side. What are we to do? Feng Lianya is someone from General Manor. Imperial Father trusts General Manor a lot. If he finds out about this matter, he will definitely not let us off. Me for extra chapters. Little fatty wiped the cold sweat off his forehead as he bit the bullet, saying, I hit her. It is not related to you. Who would have thought that Feng Lianya is so weak? Just a small beating and she is dead. However, she has brought it upon herself. She insulted Goddess sister, the young prince said. But, don't worry. I am still our Imperial Father's son. No matter what, he will not beat me to death. At most, I will be grounded for half a year. Within this half a year, you go to the herb farm and work on my behalf. Don't let Hellion you do everything. Otherwise, I will no longer have a place in Goddess sister's heart anymore. Chiner was silent for some time before she responded, I feel that Imperial Father might be extremely angry this time around. Last time, he did not allow you to leave Feng Luan Palace because you had attacked people from General Manor. But now, she bit her lip as she continued to speak, just say that it was me who has beaten her up. It is my first offense. Imperial Father would not punish me too badly. Chiyu scanned Chiner from top to bottom and he rubbed his chin lightly. Unless Imperial Father's brain is damaged, there is no way he would believe that it was you who had made a move. Speak less nonsense. Imperial Father will not punish me. I have made so many mistakes since I was young. Imperial Father had never beaten me. What more now that I had only injured a mere Feng Lianya? The little fatty snorted and did not appear to be too worried. The next time she insults Goddess sister, I am still going to beat her since she does not dare to retaliate anyway. Chapter 1549, Little Fatty Getting a Beating Eye at General Manor. A few old couriers stood in front of General Manor with smiles on their faces. Housekeeper, I previously heard that Maiden Feng has learned some medical skills and that today she is providing free diagnosis for the citizens. So, we have specially come over to show our support. Not too sure if Maiden Feng is around? The old housekeeper's smile turned awkward. Maiden Lianya had indeed learned medical skills, but it was not as exaggerated as it was known amongst the masses. It wasn't clear why Maiden Lianya had insisted on providing people free diagnosis today, and this was made known to everyone. He was really worried that something would go wrong and affect General Manor's reputation. Now that he was hearing the words of these few old courtiers, he wiped the cold sweat off his forehead, feeling a little guilty as he smiled awkwardly. This Maiden Lianya has indeed learned medical skills. The general is not in the manor lately, and Master Lianqing has received orders from the general to go and see him. Therefore, Maiden Lianya is feeling a little bored and has thus planned to find some things to do. That's all. Last night, Feng Lianqing received Tian Ya's orders and left during the night. If it were not for his departure, Feng Lianya would not have caused such problems. The old housekeeper coughed lightly, and just as he was about to speak, he suddenly saw two people carrying in a lady covered in blood toward General Manor. The two people were rushing forward and there was a sense of anxiety in their footsteps. Especially after the old housekeeper saw the maiden being carried in by the two guards, his face turned pale, and a hint of nervousness flashed deep in his eyes. How did Maiden Lianya get hurt to such an extent? Quick, get a doctor over to treat her. After the people heard his words, they immediately went to seek a doctor. The old housekeeper quickly walked to Feng Lianyi shakily. No matter what, this child was still someone that he had watched growing up. Although in the general's heart, Feng Lianyi could never compare with Master Lianqing, and she was not even comparable to Maiden Helian, she was still someone from General Manor. How could she be hurt to such an extent by someone else? Those few courtiers were also shocked silly. In the whole of Wushang City, who did not know of the mighty General Manor to have hurt someone from General Manor? What happened to Maiden Lianyi? One of the old courtiers' voice was full of shock and anger. Exactly who is so courageous to have hurt her? Me for extra chapters. The old housekeeper's gaze was full of rage as his entire old body was trembling slightly. Good thing that soon after, Feng Lianyi slowly awakened. The blood trace on her forehead remained and she was somewhat dazed. Housekeeper, Maiden Lianyi, what exactly happened? Before the housekeeper could even speak, that old courtier had already asked. Feng Lianyi never thought that there were even courtiers from the imperial court who were here. She lowered her gaze and after a while, she raised her gaze and carefully arose from the stretcher. Her eyes were full of tears, her footsteps were unsteady. I'm fine. Don't ask any more. She had just taken 2 steps forward when she almost lost consciousness again. It was a good thing that the old housekeeper had managed to catch her in time. At this moment, Feng Lianyi was so weak that she could fall at any moment. She was able to awaken so quickly probably because she was a strong person. However, in Wushang City few could have hurt Feng Lianyi. Those with such courage probably didn't exist. Maiden Feng, who exactly has hurt you to such an extent? Quickly tell us. Feng Lianyi bit her lip lightly and shook her head. She released the old housekeeper's arm. She seemed weak, however, she still determinedly walked into the general manor alone. The guards who were behind her could not bear to watch any longer. They knelt with a foot on the ground with their fists clenched tight. Grand Tutor Zhang, Chancellor Bo, please make a stand for our family's maiden. Just now, the young prince bullied the weak in front of everyone, and Our Lady could not bear to continue watching and thus went forward to stop it. Who knew that the young prince would get angry from being embarrassed and start beating Our Lady and threatening her? Shut up. The guard was already finished speaking when Feng Lianyi slowly regained her senses. Her face was deathly pale as she shouted harshly. Nobody is allowed to say another word. Maiden Feng, that matter just now was witnessed by so many people. Even if you do not talk about it, it will still reach the ears of the general manor. Why is there a need to cover up for the young prince? The guard was furious. The moment he mentioned the young prince, there was disgust in his eyes. There was no one in Wushang City who did not hate him. No, it should be said that the whole of Tianling Kingdom was utterly disgusted by the young prince. The young prince was domineering and only did evil. He was full of evil. The only thing he did not do was taking advantage of men and kidnapping women. Why did Maiden Lianyi still speak on behalf of a person like him? Grand Tutor Zhang was momentarily stunned. After that, he was so angry that his old face was trembling. The young prince was already grounded by His Majesty. Who would have thought that he had actually snuck out? The first thing he did after sneaking out was to continue causing unnecessary troubles. Really too insolent. Chancellor, inform the rest of the military and civil officials. We will immediately enter the palace to see His Majesty. This time, if His Majesty does not punish the young prince severely, we will kneel until he does so. He flapped his sleeve angrily as he turned around in anger. Feng Lianyi kept her head down from the beginning to the end. So, nobody noticed the subtle smile at the corner of her lips. Originally, she wasn't such a cunning person. She used to be very simple. Was a pity? With Feng Ruqing's existence, it was destined that she would lose her naivety. However, it did not matter. As long as Feng Ruqing disappeared, she would return to being the person she once was. Feng Lianyi raised her head. Inexplicably, she actually felt that the sunset today was very bright, just like her current mood. The Imperial Palace. In Feng Yuan Palace. Since little Fatty and Qi Qiner secretly snuck back in, they felt that the atmosphere was not quite normal. He felt his heart suddenly clench and actually had an inexplicable sense of terror and panic. Imperial Father should not have found out, right? Would he really punish him then? If he were to run to the pretty sister's manor now, would he make it in time? Me for extra chapters. As predicted, the moment the two of them snuck through the hole, a figure dressed in bright yellow appeared in their sight. All the palace maids and eunuchs knelt in a single file, and none of them dared to even raise their heads. The young prince's body stiffened slightly as he raised his head to look at the middle-aged man before him. He laughed drily. Imperial father, are you waiting for my return? Qi Fang's face was green with anger. Previously, he had withstood all the civil and military officials' pressure and managed to let off Yuer lightly. He never thought that the little prince would turn out to be worse. Not only did he sneak out and got caught, he even bullied the ordinary citizens and wounded Feng Lieni. Usually, he was able to simply give in to him. However, this time the trouble Yuer had caused was just too big. Hearsay, Feng Lieni was beaten to the point where she was unable to even walk stably, and people had already sent news to Tianya. When Tianya returned, who knew if he would come and cause trouble for him? Just thinking about it made his head ache. Imperial father. Seeing that Qi Fang did not speak, the young prince felt uneasy. Good morning. Qi Fang looked at Qi Yu coldly. The sun has already set. You have finally returned? Guards? Qi Fang did not even give Qi Yu the chance to speak. His expression was cold, dark. Bring him away, and give him 20 strokes of cane. Nobody knew that when Qi Fang said those words, his heart was throbbing slightly. All these years he had loved Yuer and had never been willing to injure him even a little. However, this time, he needed to take action to show Tianya that he was worthy of his service. The little fatty cried as snot flowed. That dirty chubby face was now covered in tears. The few guards did not dare to continue to tug the little prince and turned their gazes on Qi Fang, as if waiting for him to give an order. Qi Fang hardened his heart. Bring him away. Then bring Qiner back. Don't allow the two of them siblings to have any interactions. The guards naturally did not dare to touch Qiner, but two palace maids stepped forward and curtsied. Your Highness, the princess, sorry for doing this. After they finished speaking, the two palace maids exchanged glances and then each of them took each of Qiner's arms and brought her out. Qiner's face turned pale. Not knowing where she got the strength from, she ruthlessly pushed away these two palace maids and ran to the little fatty's side. Her beautiful face was stained with tears. Imperial father, I beg you to let off Yuer. Yuer did not do anything wrong. It is all my fault. If you want to beat someone, just beat me. I beg you not to beat Yuer. Qiner's arms were wrapped around the little fatty's chubby body. She did not disdain the fact that his face was covered in snot and tears as she held him tightly in her arms. Her whole body was trembling, obviously from extreme fear. However, no matter how terrified she felt within, she still strongly protected the little fatty. She was afraid that the moment she let go, these people would bully Yuer. Qi Fang's face was pale with anger. He did not say a word and only gave an order after a long time. What are all of you still standing there? Bring the princess back to her room and bring Yuer away, for 20 beatings. Yes, your majesty. The two palace maids exchanged glances and mustered up their courage to walk toward Qiner again. This time they used their full strength to pick her up, tightly grabbing her arms, not allowing her to have the chance to struggle. Without Qiner's hindrance, the guards were also able to pick up the little fatty who was crying his eyes out. However, just as they were carrying the little fatty away, an angry shout came from the doorway. The angry voice had an unsuppressed rage to it. I want to see who dares touch my son. The empress was in a yellow dress, looking graceful and luxurious. She appeared mighty, but the way she looked at Qi Fang was full of disappointment. The little fatty saw his imperial mother's appearance and started to cry even more pitifully. Imperial mother, Imperial father was seduced by Feng Lieni and wants to beat me up for that despicable servant, Feng Lieni. He definitely likes Feng Lieni. Imperial mother, you must kill Feng Lieni to help me vent. If he was able to settle Feng Lieni, that despicable person, perhaps. Pretty sister would be very happy. Just thinking about it made him happy. Therefore, the little fatty talked about it as if even he himself believed it. Imperial father is too flirtatious. Having 3,000 beauties in his harem is still not sufficient that he has even set his sights on Feng Lieni. That Feng Lieni is not a good person. Pretty sister is still the best, she only loves her husband alone. Qi Fang was left speechless. He had wanted to beat this little fatty just now merely for show so that Tianya could see it. No. He really wanted to slap this little brat to death. He had actually dared to sow discord between him and his empress. Empress, it isn't like that. The empress had a cold expression. Your Majesty, I don't normally stop you when you take in concubines. As an empress, I definitely need to act as the mother of the nation and not simply get jealous. However, Feng Lieni is unacceptable. Furthermore, your majesty is willing to harm Yuer for the sake of Feng Lieni. I definitely disallow this. Empress. Qi Fang's expression darkened and turned cold. Today I have already given Yuer a chance. Yet he still made so many mistakes. This time I definitely need to punish him. Otherwise how will the people see me? Me for extra chapters. The little fatty spat. Who did wrong? I did not do anything wrong. It is Feng Lieni, that despicable person who had purposely framed me. She even bullied pretty sister. As long as I leave the imperial palace, sooner or later, I will kill off that despicable servant. There were a few courtiers who had followed along besides Qi Fang. When these courtiers heard the little fat Yi's words, their expressions changed. They had never thought that he was still so arrogant and domineering, totally disregarding everyone else. Your Majesty, the young prince has a bad character. You must punish him. If your Majesty does not punish him when the general returns in a few days, he might resign and leave. Who will protect the towns of our Tianling kingdom then? Don't forget that it was only because of General Tianya that Tianling kingdom managed to keep its land multiple times. Qi Fang slowly closed his eyes. As the emperor of a kingdom, he was unwilling to admit that he was weak and needed to rely on a courtier, even if he invited this courtier to his kingdom by visiting him and sincerely pleading him multiple times. However, what these people said was the truth. Tianling kingdom was the weakest and was almost swallowed up by the other kingdoms. It was only because of Tianya that it managed to survive to this day. Guards? Qi Fang opened his eyes, determined. Bring the empress away. Give Qiyu 20 strokes. Chapter 1553. Little Fatty getting a beating. The empress turned pale. She angrily pushed aside the palace maids who were approaching to take her away as she said angrily, Your Majesty. You really wish to beat Yuer for Feng Liani's sake? Qi Fang closed his eyes and opened them again after some time. Empress, I thought that you would understand me. If he did not do so when Tianya returned, he had no way of giving him an explanation. Qi Fang saw the disbelief in the empress' eyes but still hardened his heart and gave the orders. Take the empress away and lock her up together with Qiner in Feng Yuan Palace. Don't allow them to take even half a step out. Seeing the two palace maids continuing to approach her, the empress ruthlessly pushed them aside and shouted angrily. Move aside. All of you get lost. Qi Fang was slightly stunned. He turned his head sideways to look at the guards who were following closely behind him and gave them a look. He looked toward the empress apologetically. Empress, I have already given Yuer a chance. We cannot continue to be so forgiving toward him. Otherwise, who knows what kind of disasters he will stir up. The two guards had very high cultivation. The two of them exchanged a glance and went over to grab the empress' arms. No matter how much strength she used, she was unable to struggle out of their grasp. You all are not allowed to touch Yuer. Not allowed to touch him. Her body was trembling so much the golden hairpins in her head were already shaken out of place. Her hair was messy. She no longer had the propriety she had in the past and instead looked like a madman. Noble consort Lin, who was next to her, glanced at the empress and smiled smugly. Even if the empress once received affection from the emperor, so what? Now, she still ended up like this. Those guards had already dragged the little fatty away, and not long after, his wailing and sobbing could be heard. Each sound that he made was like a thorn that ruthlessly stabbed into the empress' heart. It made her eyes turn red as tears flowed out. Her entire being seemed to emit madness. Qi Fang once again closed his eyes and tried his best not to listen to those sounds. Although he had already ordered those people not to be too heavy-handed, he still needed to do this to show it to the people. This time's beating was also real. Compared to Qi Fang's heartache and the empress' madness, there was a kind of indescribable happiness that other people felt in their hearts. If it wasn't because of the empress' feelings and his majesty, they might have laughed aloud. Amongst these people, noble consort Lin felt the most gleeful. Me for extra chapters. Qi Qiner's body crumbled to the ground as tears appeared in her eyes. Her small frame was trembling slightly. Girls have always been a little arrogant. Even if you have a little temper, it doesn't matter. You can't bow your head to anyone. You must hold your head high at all times. She was just about to lower her head when the young maiden's warm voice appeared in her mind. She was slightly stunned and involuntarily raised her head as she climbed back up. The two palace maids wanted to stop her, but this time, Qi Qiner used all her strength to ruthlessly push away the two palace maids, not allowing them to touch her at all. Even her face was full of arrogance. She raised her head and puffed out her chest. She looked proud. She walked out the door. She was walking slowly, but each step felt like a step on Qi Fang's heart. Qiner? When Qi Fang opened his eyes, he saw Qi Qiner's determined footsteps. He hesitated for a moment and suddenly called out to her. Younger brother beat Feng Lianyi, because of me? She raised her head. The gentle breeze blew against her hair, like an arm gently caressing her. However, I don't think we have done anything wrong. He did all these to protect me. If Imperial Father really thinks that we were wrong, then I will accept the punishment together with my younger brother. Qi Qiner turned her head around. Her gaze was clear like clean waters, but there was an immovable determination in it. After all, he is my one and only younger brother. Yue beat up that young man because of her. It was also because of her that Feng Lianyi was wounded. She was willing to take responsibility for all that had happened. Qi Fang was slightly stunned. He looked at Qi Qiner's unyielding expression and his heart shuddered slightly. This time, did he really do wrong? Qiyu, that little guy, had always lied as it was his second nature. He was domineering and unreasonable. Since young, he had caused quite a bit of trouble outside because of the backing he had and even bullied the weak. However, Qi Qiner was not the same. She never lied. Furthermore, this was his first time seeing Qiner like this. Qi Qiner did not bother about Qi Fang as she rushed toward the outside of the palace. She was met with Qiyu, who was crying. Her skinny body was like a butterfly as she ran toward Qiyu, using her own soft and weak body to block the landing cane. This cane landed on Qi Qiner's weak body. She was in so much pain that her whole body trembled, but she only thought of protecting her younger brother, so she did not avoid it. Stop. Qi Fang finally regained his senses. However, it still came too late. Another beating landed, but the long cane accidentally landed on the back of Qi Qiner's head instead. Qi Qiner spat out a mouthful of blood. The Empress' eyes turned red. Qiner. Her voice was heartbreaking. Somehow, she found the strength to break free from the grasp of the two guards as she flew over to Qi Qiner. Qi Qiner's body rolled over to the ground and into the Empress' embrace. Blood was still flowing from the back of her head, making a mess in the Empress' hands. Imperial Mother, Qi Qiner's voice was weak. This time, younger brother did not bully anyone. He was protecting me. Indeed, her younger brother, who only knew how to bully others before, was protecting her this time, me, for extra chapters. What a joy. Qi Qiner wanted to smile. However, in the end, she had no strength left as she shut her eyes weakly. The Empress held Qi Qiner's body tightly. She had calmed down. She was as calm as the calm before the storm. Compared to Qiyu, who always liked to cause trouble, Qi Qiner has always been very mature. Perhaps it was precisely that she was so mature that she usually pampered Qiyu more. However, Qi Qiner was her child. It was her child whom she had carried for 10 months. She was the continuation of her life, she was her existence that could not be cut off. However, now Qi Qiner was quietly lying in her arms, like a ragged doll, lifeless. The two guards who were in charge of the beatings were stupefied. There was a strong fear in their hearts as they immediately knelt on the ground. Your Majesty, I did not do it on purpose. Just now it was as if somebody touched my cane and that's why that happened. Please have mercy, Your Majesty. Qi Fang's footsteps were somewhat clumsy as he staggered. His gaze was full of panic and terror. Quickly call for the Imperial Doctor. However, just as Qi Fang spoke, a shrill voice rang out. Your Majesty, His Highness, the young prince, he lost consciousness. Although Qiyu had thick skin, his cultivation was too low. Originally, he was already beaten almost 20 times, and now that he saw Qi Qiner fainting, his anger got to him and he immediately lost consciousness. Qi Fang clenched his trembling hand as he gave an order. Bring the young prince to see the Imperial Doctor for diagnosis. Don't let him leave. Besides, check this matter for me. If anyone dares to take action and harm my daughter, if I find out, I will definitely cut off his heritage line. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.